In this beginner-friendly tutorial, I'm going to show you how to paint these sweet little daffodils using watercolour, so let's get started. The paints that I'm using today are from Mijello Mission Gold. I have lemon yellow, primary yellow light, primary yellow deep, we have burnt umber, and also we have ultramarine deep. I've also decided to use a little bit of white paint here. This is Chinese white, which I've used to mix with the lemon yellow to create this lovely opaque colour, and I'm going to be mixing lemon yellow with ultramarine for the greens. Mission Gold paints come in little tubes like this, and I squeeze them into my palette. I use this colour chart to match my colours, and I'll put an information card on the top of your screen as to how I do this. And here is how we trace down the drawings. Now, of course, you can draw them freehand, and I provide you with a free reference photograph and outline, and I'll tell you later on how you can obtain them. This is a little palette that I use along with the brushes and all the materials that I'm going to be using. Don't worry if you didn't catch them there, because I'll be putting them in the description box underneath this video. Clean glass of water, some kitchen paper, and we are good to go. Now, watercolour is all about building up your colours from light to dark. So I start by mixing a watery mix of lemon yellow with a tiny bit of Chinese white. I wanted this to be a really soft lemon yellow, and I'm using here my spotter brush. This is a number 4 sized spotter brush from Rosemary & Co. And if you don't know what spotters are, they're the same as round brushes, but they have a shorter bristle and are quite stubby and therefore make paint application a lot easier. So I'm taking the brush into the paint and I'm applying it straight onto the paper like this. I'm just adding a tiny bit here of primary yellow light along with primary yellow deep, and you can see the ratio of water to paint. So I'm applying the mix here to this section of the daffodil. This is meant to be a really stress-free painting and is suitable for beginners. So we're just applying the paint directly onto the paper, and hopefully this is easy to follow steps so that you can join in. Now that the paint is dry, I'm adding a watery mix of primary yellow deep to the areas that you can see here, cleaning my brush in the water, patting it dry on the kitchen paper and blending it out like this. When you blend your paint into your existing wash, make sure that your brush is just damp and not wet, because you don't want your paint to move around. So now that this first section is dry, you can see I've mixed a little bit more of the primary yellow deep, and I'm just using my number 2 size pointed round to apply the paint, as you can see, this time just leaving out some of the areas that we painted in first. All the brushes that I'm using today are from Rosemary & Co, and they're all synthetic and are just super easy to use. I love Rosemary's brushes. I've been working with them for quite a long time and highly recommend them. So I will link everything in the description box underneath this video. Now, if you don't have the colours that I'm using or the paints that I'm using, please don't worry. Use whichever paints that you have within your own set, because invariably you will be able to find the same colours that I'm using today. And if you are struggling with your colours, let me know in the comments below and I'll do my best to help you based on the colours that you have within your own set. You can see that I'm adding a little bit of lemon yellow to the outside of the petals here, just to give them a little bit more form. It's important that your paint is dry before you do this, because you don't want the paint to blend into each other at this point. Picking up a little bit more of that lovely primary yellow deep and just adding a little bit of paint to the outside of this section here. I'm now mixing a little bit of ultramarine deep with the lemon yellow. First of all, with more lemon yellow, because I want it to be a sort of really bright, vibrant green, as you can see me applying here to this section. And the same on the other side. Just straight onto the paper with my number 2 pointed round. This particular brush has a really fine point and is great for adding finer details as well as bigger washes like this. Notice how I'm using a pat-in motion to push that paint into the pencil line. I'm adding a tiny bit more of the ultramarine deep so that I've got more of a bluey tone this time, dropping it into that existing wash, wet in wet, so that that paint naturally blurs into the paint that I've already applied. You can see that it has a really soft edge, and I'm doing it on the other side. Now that everything's in place, I use my brush just to lift out the middle of that section. A little bit of pressure is all that's needed to create that little highlight. I'm going to be using the bluey green mix on the bottom part here with a little bit of that brighter mix just to put on the bottom part of the stem. This time we are just mixing a little bit of burnt umber with a tiny bit of the Chinese white and taking it all over this section. Now at the start of this video I mentioned that I supply you with a free outline and a reference photo to work from to join in with me, and there are a couple of ways that you can obtain it. I will put the still of the photograph and the line drawing at the very end of this video, so be sure to stay right until the end where you can pause the video, screenshot it and print it out that way, as well as join our lovely Facebook group where we have access to all of our reference photographs and outlines for our tutorials here on YouTube. So do consider joining us there. I will put a link in the description box underneath. So mixing again, we have this lovely lemon yellow with ultramarine deep, and again the same consistency as before, the same ratio as before. We have more of a lime green colour and a bluey colour, so obviously adding a little bit more ultramarine deep to that section. So now that that paint is dry, you can see I've gone over that little area there, avoiding this time the highlight that I've lifted out and painting around it like this, adding a bit more of that bluey green tone to the outside edge of this section. Now this tutorial is meant for beginners. I've tried to make it as beginner friendly as I am, but if you are used to watercolour painting and you really love botanical art and you want to level up your painting skills, you may want to join our Patreon where we have exclusive content that you won't find here on YouTube, and in case you're interested, let's just take a look. If you love botanical painting and want to know more, then you may want to join our Patreon. We have different membership levels so that you can take your botanical painting to the next level. With our Clematis level, you will have a full-length, in-depth tutorial every month, and if you'd like to make even more progress, then check out our Rose level, where we now have a mentorship offering feedback to help you grow. You won't find any of our Patreon tutorials here on YouTube, and you can cancel your membership at any time. So if you want to take your botanical painting to the next level, then take a look. I'll put the link in the description underneath this video. So as I've said, you won't find any of our Patreon tutorials here on YouTube, and our YouTube tutorials are full length and completely free. You can see me here adding a little bit of that bluey green tone to the areas shown, again with my number 2 size pointed round, because the paint is now dry and I'm able to do this without worrying of it bleeding into the existing washes. Remember that you can pause this video at any time if you're joining in with me, and you can slow it down if you feel I'm going a little bit too fast. Okay, so picking up this lighter green tone and adding it to the top of this part here, and patting that brush onto my kitchen paper to blend it into that lovely yellow tone that we've applied already. Now, as I work through this tutorial, if you have any questions, please drop them in the comments below. I love to hear from you. If you're having any difficulties, there might be something I can help you with, so please mention it in the comments below. So once again, now that this paint is dry, I'm going over this little area with that bluey green mix so that we can enhance that colour. Remember, watercolour is all about building up your colours gently and gradually. This way you won't get that muddy, overworked look that is notorious with watercolour. You can be a little bit too heavy-handed. It's really important that you let your layers dry and apply your paint thinly. That way your painting won't look overworked. So to the mix, I'm adding a little bit of burnt umber. To that, I'm adding a tiny bit of ultramarine deep. This makes a kind of greyish tone that I'm going to be using in a minute, and I'm using this colour to just add a little bit more of a darker value to the base of this section here, along with a tiny bit of the primary yellow deep. I'm just putting a tiny bit of the green mix into this white mix that I have here. So to recap, that is the Chinese white with lemon yellow with a tiny bit of that green tone, and I'm just taking this onto the petals of the daffodil to add a little bit of detail. Notice how light in colour that paint is. You want it to look really natural. So if you find that your paint is too dark, you could either add a bit more water or you could add a bit more white paint. Traditionally, we wouldn't use white paint in watercolour, but I kind of like the look of it for this painting. Adding a tiny bit of green here. And a little bit of yellow dropping in on the outside of some of the petals. I'm just using my photograph as a guide. We're not doing photorealism or anything like that here today. It's all about getting used to applying the paint onto the paper and having fun with it, and hopefully creating a painting that you've enjoyed and can be proud of. Notice how I'm blending the paint into the paper with a brush, applying it, dabbing it on my kitchen paper, and then blending it into that paper. Patting the paint on like this, and just taking what's left on my brush to the outside edge of that petal. I just picked up some of that burnt umber mix there with a tiny bit of the white mix and just taking it down here to add a little bit of shadow. It just creates a little bit of illusion of there being folds in these daffodil petals. So I'm just adding a tiny bit more of that burnt umber mix to create a little bit more form on these this element of the daffodil, using my brush to create fine lines. And always blend it through with that damp brush. We have over 100 free tutorials here on our YouTube channel, so if you haven't already subscribed, maybe you'd like to consider doing so and hitting that little bell notification so that you don't miss any tutorials that are coming out every single Tuesday. And if you are enjoying this video, could I ask you please to smash that like button? It's a free way of letting YouTube know that you are enjoying my content, and I would really appreciate it. So using this mix now that I've got of burnt umber with a tiny bit of the ultramarine deep on the side there, you can see how I'm applying this paint and blending it in. I'm randomly creating these little veins as I go through, as well as this little part here where I'm just adding a tiny bit of that sort of greyish tone, and then taking the brush underneath to outline the underside of that like this, and then applying that same colour underneath the outline that I've created so that it gives the illusion of that little bit being in shadow. So once again, just taking this brush and outlining the area here, just adding a bit of detail where I feel it is needed. I'm not going strictly to the photograph, I just want to have the illusion of this little piece looking papery and transparent. You can see I'm just using a really light pressure to add these little veins. The tip of this number 2 brush is great for adding fine details. You don't really need to go smaller than this. It's perfect for doing the smaller veinings, and like I said, I will put all the materials that I'm using today in the description box underneath this video so that you can check them out for yourself. Adding a bit more of that darker tone around the base where they hit the stem of the daffodil, and just working around like this. I decided to add a bit more of that lovely lemon yellow with the green here, and again we have a bit more of the ultramarine deep, and I'm going to just once again enhance that little area there so that we have a bit more drama. Because I've been building up my layers slowly, it won't be overworked and I can continue to get that colour as dark as I need it. Gently blending it through with that damp brush. And working down the stem a little bit here. So we are almost at the end of this video. Be sure to stay right until the end where you can pause this video and get the screenshots of the reference photograph and of course that outline. If you are still here, thank you so much for watching. Stay until the end and remember to hit that subscribe button if you don't want to miss out on our free tutorials every single Tuesday, as well as hit that like button. So I'm going to let you watch the rest of this video in peace. Stay until the end. Thank you so much for watching, and remember, if you have any comments, drop them in the comments below. I'd love to hear from you. Once again, thank you for watching and I'll see you next week.